Hey y'all, how we doing? Shout out to Bear Nation for tuning in for another episode of the Bare Necessities of Entrepreneurship, a podcast for the entrepreneur-minded, created by entrepreneurs, discussing the real stories that give you the tools to overcome challenges and stay true to your real self. As always, I want to give a shout out to our partners over at Fin. Fin is a social good platform that creates employee engagement and builds culture. We've teamed up with Fin to give back to the communities that we serve. For every episode, we will be donating $10 to the cause of choosing by our guest in the Fin platform. Enjoy today's episode. Hi, y'all. We are back once again for another episode of the Bare Necessities of Entrepreneurship podcast. And today's going to be a fun episode because it's our first Gen Z entrepreneur. And really excited because it's those that are listening know that this podcast is about entrepreneurship, what it is today, but more importantly, what it is tomorrow. Really geared towards entrepreneur-minded, millennials, Gen Z, when we think about what is the future of work. And so today, I am interviewing Livi Redden. And Livi is a podcast host. She is a mindset educator. She is an entrepreneur herself, a writer. She's got a book that she is working on behind the scenes. And she believes that through the power of intention, emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and a desire to grow, we can all tap into our sublime essence. That's deep, Livi. So say hello to Bear Nation for me.
Bear Nation, hello. I'm excited to be here. Every time I hear that short little sentence about what I believe, it gets me really excited. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to talk about my little journey, and I'm excited to talk with Rob because it's always a good time when we get to have a good, deep conversation.
Absolutely. And so for those that are listening and those that are watching, Livi and I were introduced through a mutual connection of ours, a badass entrepreneur by the name of Casey Jones. And Casey's on my personal board of advisors. Her and I have talked a lot in depth about what it means to be a solopreneur and kind of how to find support. And so one day I was telling Casey, I really need a VA to help from a content standpoint, somebody who can support me in driving social content growth. And she was like, Rob, I got you. I know who I need to introduce you to, especially because you want to do a lot of work with millennials and Gen Z. And she introduced me to Livi, and Livi and I have been working together for a little while. So that's how I know Livi and why I'm excited to have her on the pod, because as I mentioned in the intro, she's done a lot of different things and has a lot of projects ongoing in quite a short time. And so let's kick things off with, you're an entrepreneur now, right? You have your own content VA services, but how did you get here? I mean, I know you and I have talked before, you went to college for a year. So let's start with, how did you get into entrepreneurship and to be an entrepreneur that supports other entrepreneurs through services?
Right. Yeah. So I've always been pretty entrepreneurial minded since I was young. Loved to start businesses since I was young. Loved to organize groups. Like I organized a flash mob when I was in like 6th grade, wrote my first business plan when I was like 10 to get quote investing from my mom. And then I did a lot of business type projects throughout my high school experience. And then getting to this point now, I've had a big interest in entrepreneurship pretty much my whole life. And so I ended up out of high school going to college at the University of Utah. And I went to a year of their business school. I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to their business program out of high school, which was really exciting. And I went there for a year. I was planning to go into operations and supply chain because I am a very strategic person. And so strategy sounded like a great fit for me. So I ended up going to college for a year, and right as the pandemic hit, I was finishing up my first year of college, and I got sent home. I was living on campus. They sent everybody home, and in March, I was finishing up that first college year, and I started my podcast and writing my book. And that was something that I had wanted to do for quite a while. And since I was kind of back at home, I wanted another project. And since stuff was kind of wrapping up, I decided to start writing my book and starting my podcast. And that's something that I had wanted to do for a really long time. I've been like a podcast junkie since I was 15 or 16. And psychology, sociology, personal development, therapy styles, all of those things have been very interesting to me since like a young age. Like I probably read my first, I don't know, I was all about the chicken noodle soup books in like elementary school. So I feel like that's what like got me going in elementary school. But I started my podcast in April of 2019. And then I had started writing my first book actually when I was 16, my sophomore year of high school. And it was about my family's experience with my dad having a terminal illness throughout. He had a terminal illness and starting when I was 12, he was diagnosed and passed away when I was 17. And I was going to write a story, a book about what it's like to have a parent with a terminal illness from a young person's perspective. Just because I wasn't really seeing that. I'd never really seen anything like that. And I started writing it, got like a fourth of the way through and just didn't really feel like it was the message I wanted. So then I had an idea at the gym. I was doing my 8-count weight lifts, and I had an idea to write a book that had to do about what life is like at the time I was 18, so an 18-year-old's perspective, and lessons about life from an 18-year-old, which I had never really seen in like the personal development industry. So I had that idea in 2018, and then I finally got started on the book, really writing it at the beginning of 2019. So that's kind of how that all came about. So, and then I left, so I went to college for a year, came home during COVID, started that podcast, writing my book, and then decided after that first year that I wanted to take a year off of college because I was really loving what I was doing. I was having like some of the most fun I've ever had in my life doing this podcast, writing my book, like putting my soul into this journey. And so I talked to my college and I said, hey, could I get a leave of absence? And that way I could keep my full ride scholarship during that year while I tried to figure myself out. So I took a year off of school, continued to pursue those things. In the beginning of 2020, I started my business doing virtual assistant services for business coaches and life coaches. That was the niche that I had chosen. And so, yeah, I continue to run that business that I started beginning of 2021. I'm getting my dates mixed up. Geez. Beginning of 2021. So yeah, now I do my VA business part-time. I get to work with amazing coaches and I'm learning so much from them. And then I do my stuff part-time, making mindset content for young people, running my global virtual book club, my podcast, my book, all that fun stuff. So
to kind of recap all of that, because there's a lot going in there.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Had a full ride opportunity to go to college, which is amazing, right? A full ride scholarship, business degree, supply chain and strategy. And at the end of year one, as you sat down, the pandemic was hitting, they sent you home. You're looking at just life and what you wanted. And so you decided to take a step away from college as these other passion projects, the first book to the second book to the podcast, all hit. And you realizing, as we sit here today in 2021, that you're in this passionate place of this journey that needs to be explored. And so college no longer is kind of where you see that traditional route, but it's starting your own business to support the projects that you really care about, this global book hub, the book writing, and the podcast, which I think are the the podcast, which I think is amazing. So when we think about what you do as a virtual assistant, you're a business, right? So tell me a little bit about, what you obviously chose coaches. There's a certain space, but why content creation? Why did you really look at these things that you do and be like, I can really support others in a very meaningful way around content? What was that spark for you?
Yeah, so I felt the ways that I could really help people was with their social media strategy, as well as, since I'm a writer, I do ghostwriting as well as a VA. And I really felt like those two things I could bring a lot of value, because I looked for what pain points I saw coaches have, or I was looking in Facebook groups and like what other VAs had learned, and I had found that a lot of coaches, or just people in general, were hiring virtual assistants and feeling really frustrated because they had to explain their business to them every time. Like, they didn't really understand what they were doing. So for example, if it was a business coach, they're hiring a VA and say they're having them do, some sort of outreach. And that VA doesn't really understand how this is contributing to the growth of the business and doesn't really see the long game plan. That was really frustrating for a lot of coaches, business coaches. And I thought, well, since I have a very entrepreneurial mindset, I understand the long game for like a decent amount as far as what, like, scaling businesses, like coaching businesses. And then also, since I have a lot of background about mindset and that sort of thing, and I feel like I have always really connected with, I guess, people older than myself. Like, I really love like mindset conversations, emotional intelligence conversations. I really felt like I could bring value, especially as far as content creation goes, because I feel like I can really get in the mindset of those coaches because I understand them and I understand what they're trying to grow, and they don't really need to explain that to me. And that's why I felt like ghostwriting and content creation would be so perfect for me, is because I understand them and I'm solving a pain point for them of having someone that they don't have to explain every nitty gritty detail to.
Yeah. So I love that. I mean, so one, it's, you knew that there's a space and a place for you. And instead of just fumbling through its research and getting involved in asking questions and talking with others in the industry and learning from that, right? That research, that strategy mindset, like, let's research and figure this out. And so, you talked a lot about personal development. That's something that you care deeply about. And as a 20-something, with this personal development mentality and where you want to go, right? Chicken soup back in elementary school and all these different things, choosing to support business coaches seemed kind of natural because it allowed you to develop skills. So, and learn from them. So, like, where do you see this stage of your journey taking you into the later stages of your journey, or have you planned that out yet? Is that something that's still fluid? Or do you have a plan? What is that thinking of where you are today to what that actually takes you to tomorrow?
Absolutely. Yeah. I felt also, starting a business as a virtual assistant would also really help me in the long run. And this is something that me and Rob have talked about, that we also talked about on my podcast. Rob came on my podcast, so you can go listen to that one. Today's the future. And we talked about on there is that sometimes it's worth going for the job that might pay less or might not be like as scalable, quote, for like the short-term knowledge and the skills. And actually, when I was starting this business, I was trying to decide between starting a podcast production company, because podcasting is, I've worked with, last year I worked with a company out of San Francisco doing their podcast. And I was like, well, that's something I could probably scale. And I thought on it for a long time about starting a business doing podcast production. But I was thinking to myself, well, that might give me more money momentarily, less hours, more money, more scalable, but I'm not really giving myself, creating skills and learning from people that a VA business would have. And although, yeah, I do make good money doing this and it's a lot of fun, it might not have, it doesn't bring in, I mean, being honest, it doesn't bring in as much as had I done that podcast production business. But I just felt like, okay, well, skills, and if we're playing the long game, learning skills from these amazing people that I'm working with is going to be a lot more valuable than going for like the quicker cash now. So that was kind of how it played into my long game. So as far as being a VA, it's been really awesome because myself, I would like to become a mindset coach for teens and 20 somethings and helping them navigate this really confusing time of their life, because so many young people don't have a support system that's helping them make these really rough decisions like marriage, college, kids, dealing with their childhood trauma. Like a lot of kids don't have anyone to talk to. They don't even really know where to start as far as working through these things. And it's very evident to me with the DMs that I get, with the content that I post. And so being able to, this business teaching me the skills that has been infinitely more beneficial for me than just a business that might bring me in more money. So that's kind of where it ties in as far as the long game goes, that I am really learning so many skills that I'll take with me forever as far as starting my own coaching business.
Yeah. So I love that. So I mean, in stepping into this space and place, it's really about opportunity over money, right? Opportunity to work with other coaches and entrepreneurs who are doing similar things that you want to be doing in different markets, different segments, different age groups, whatever, but allowing yourself to learn, grow, and see how that translates downstream. I think it's amazing, right? So many times we're taught to just follow the path, step 1, step 2, step 3, instead of actually chasing what opportunity really is. And
right.
The path is usually monetarily incentivized versus experience oriented. And I think, we love on this show nonlinear career paths, and mine, and we've shared plenty of others, is that when you chase opportunity, you chase experience, money comes. But not only just money comes, right, passion comes, right? Because you find the things that you're passionate about. You talked a little bit about this, the book writing, and you've got an idea for a book that you wanted to do, but you originally wrote a book first about your father and kind of dealing with that. So when you look at being an entrepreneur and you look at, that book, getting about a third of the way through, not finishing, you looked at this business and why you wanted to do it. You started a podcast, you made a decision to leave college and take a leave of absence. What do you think are some of the big challenges, like the real challenges that you've overcome in starting this new business and writing a new book and in starting a podcast? What were the things that led those not to be completed that have led to this being the right path?
Right. Yeah. As far as challenges I feel I've had to overcome to take this path and start this business, I would say, number one, obviously, when you kind of go off the beaten path, in some people's eyes, because a few months ago, I took my year leave of absence. I had to decide because I needed to either sign up for the next semester and keep my scholarship, or kind of be done for now. And I decided to be done for now. So I did lose all my scholarships by leaving college. And I think for some people, that's a really, really stupid decision. And I get that, but I have found something that I feel like has come very naturally from a young age. And I think also having a mom that really instilled confidence in me since I was young. And then also me taking the time to instill confidence in myself and do a lot of healing and self-reflection work. I felt really confident in my decision because the things that I talk about online in my book is living in alignment. And I am constantly asking myself, okay, well, what is in alignment for Livy? Like, screw what everyone else is telling me I should be doing, right? What feels right to me and what feels, because I feel like when you get in tune with yourself enough, you can tell what is going to bring you passion and what's in alignment with you. And so that was one thing I think was finally giving up trying to explain to people why I do what I do, because it's just irrelevant. Like, they either get it or they don't, and I'm going to do what I know I should be doing. So that's one thing. And I think also, just like, I mean, I don't really like the word imposter syndrome because I feel like it's been overused, but like that sense of getting over this sense of feeling like I need to improve myself because I am a young person in all the spaces I work in. And getting over that sense of feeling not credible enough. That's something I've really had to overcome. And I think that's something that I've built over the years. I definitely have less of that, of feeling not credible enough, because, you know, if you, like Rob talks about a lot, it's about experience gained. It's not about age. It's not about necessarily how long you've been doing something, but like how deep have you dived? How much like actual experience have you gained? So that would be another thing. And also just, you know, prioritizing time management. And it's tough, especially as a young person, you know, like I've had to have a lot of conversations with friends and family that, you know, I can't leave for lunch or get on an hour-long FaceTime call at the drop of a hat because I'm extremely structured. And even though I'm working from home, this is my job. And I think some people don't really see it as a quote real job because it's from home, and I don't know, they just don't understand. And so that's something that has been also a little bit of a struggle, is really structuring myself, because at the end of the day, everything I'm doing, the success of it depends on me. No one else is going to do it for me, so I have to be very structured and careful about my time, but also I keep a really high priority of making sure I'm spending time with my family and my friends, because I think if I don't build that habit now of keeping solid connections with those people, it's going to be a lot harder later. So just balancing all that and really keeping myself, because motivation's only going to get you so far, right? It comes down to the strategies and habits you instill. And so really, and I know Rob understands this, and probably people listening, if you're also an entrepreneur, of keeping things going regardless of when you're tired or don't feel like doing it, and just getting yourself to dive in, because it gets tiring and it gets I love it. I mean, this is like, I'm living the dream. I'm living in alignment. I freaking love my life. But it gets tough sometimes.
I mean, you made a couple of key points there, right? And when you think about the future of work, and we look at, you know, as we're coming out of the pandemic, we're looking at people that want to go back to office versus people that don't, and the different demographics of that. And the thing that comes into this all is that we get to choose now, and there's a lot more opportunity out there to do things that you want in the way that you want them. And what people are having a really hard time understanding is that that's going to come at the cost of something. Right? Working remote all the time, well, you may not get paid as much because you're not commuting every day, right? And there's like this give and take. And so I think when we look at the future of work and what's about to happen, is you're going to see a lot of things change. And you're going to see the way people get promoted change. You're going to see the way people take jobs. Saying people who are probably more qualified to take a more senior job may not want as senior of a job to take something that they like to do that allows them to have other time and energy for passion of things outside of work. And, you know, that's why I always say, you know, credibility comes in experience gain, not years of experience. You know, so there's somebody that could be doing the same job every day for 10 years. Does that make them experienced? Well, yeah, they're an experience in that one thing. But if they're not getting experience in other areas of the business, how can you say that 10-year person's more experienced? Like, it all comes down to what, when, where, how you're consuming that content, consuming that information, and then how are you transitioning it to learn to turn it out, which is part about being a coach. And I tell people this a lot, right? Is that being a coach is to bring out the best in others. Being a mentor is giving the best of yourself, right? And when we think about what does that mean, we go through hard shit all the time. And as you were saying, we expect teachers and others to do that for these kids, but not everyone wants to go through college. And with TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat and YouTube and Twitch and Facebook and Twitter and Marco Polo and Clubhouse and Green Room, and I could go on and on and on. These are all places that you consume content. These are places that you can learn, develop, grow, scale. And so you have a lot of information coming. And we think about your generation, Gen Z. I'm a millennial. I didn't quite get the fully hyper-connected until about high school, really end of college, when it went full connectivity. Gen Z has been hyper-connected from day one, right? And so the way that you consume information at so much faster pace, which I think is this big conundrum of coming out of like, what is credibility? And overcoming imposter syndrome is also unique, because imposter syndrome is not always what we think it is. A lot of it's really that IG lifestyle, right? It's the influencers and what it really isn't versus what it really is. And, I know that you talk a lot online about personal development and how to live in alignment. So when you think about this business today of being a VA and wanting to be a coach, what do you think is going to be the major challenge of making that transition over? And have you thought about that transition over from where you are today to like, hey, I'm a coach and here's the things that I'm doing? Or is it something you think is just going to kind of fluidly happen through your own content you put out?
I think it'll be fairly fluid. I think I could start a decent coaching business right now, just because I see that there's a demand for it from the people that interact with me frequently and message me on social media. But I would rather, because I would rather learn from the coaches that I'm working with now and get more experience than kind of just, I don't know. I would rather, I like to find a good balance between efficiency. I'm definitely not a perfectionist, but I think if you give some things a little more time, it can make things much more efficient. So I feel like right now I would like to do this a little bit longer, or a while longer, just because I would rather give a little more time to the VA business that I'm running right now, learn more, and that way I can also bring the best out of people when I'm coaching them, because I do genuinely care about the people that I would be coaching or that see my content every day and support me. Like, to a deep level, I do really care about those people. I have to kind of separate my emotions as well, because, I'm getting messages from young people saying, my parents kicked me out of the house. I'm suicidal. I broke up with my boyfriend, and I'm like, my whole life is crumbling. Like, getting those DMs every day, you really have to pay attention to your emotional state. And there's been times I've had people say, can I get on a FaceTime call with you? Like, I know this is weird, but can I get on a FaceTime call with you and have you help me? And I have to say no. And it kind of sucks sometimes, but for my own well-being, like, getting too deep into other people's emotional trauma and what's going on in their lives, I really have to regulate myself. Yeah. But sorry, that was kind of off topic a little bit. But yeah, as far as going from VA to coaching, I think it will be fairly fluid. And I definitely have, being the strategic person I am, I've got the full document, like 5-year game plan that's constantly changing. So
not surprised when you wrote your first business plan to your mom to invest in your business, like what, 6th grade or something like that.
I got turned down. She turned me down. I didn't get the investment. If I would have known you then, you might have helped me with pitching.
Probably. But you got to take a few beatings before you get the acceptance that
that's right
is coming. So you talk about getting a lot of these DMs and from the conversation. So from your perspective, when we look at the future of work, when you think about teens and 20-somethings who will be entering the workforce in the next 2 to 10 years, what do you think are some of the things that entrepreneurs or business owners today should be paying attention to in terms of how are they going to tap into this collective, hyper-connected, very in touch group of people who know what's happening all around the world through the click of a phone screen?
Yeah, I definitely think there's going to be, this is just, there's a few things. I think there is going to be this really interesting shift of where creators, like personal brands, will be just as big of brands as like big company brands. I think there's going to be this continuing rise of like influencers as brands, and I think that will be a really interesting change. And also as far as what I think, because Gen Z is a really interesting group. And I love that I'm a part of that group, but I definitely would say, one, I think just like what Rob talks about with millennials, I think Gen Z really cares about what mission they're working towards. I think a lot of Gen Z really cares that they are passionate about what the business that they're working for or starting is something that they feel aligned with or like semi-passionate about. I would also say, I think it's become more evident, at least because I did quite a bit of market research on like Gen Z with my book. And I think it's definitely also with the pandemic has changed people's perceptions on things. And I think Gen Z has started to also put more emphasis, I guess, depending on who you're talking to, on having like a flexible work schedule and being able and prioritizing certain things in their life. I think Gen Z is really motivated and passionate, but I think there's also a level of not quite as much of a hustle culture, I don't think. And I think also that's why I think there's so much potential with Gen Z, and why I would like to coach some of these like college, high school age people, is that I think Gen Z is amazing at like bringing community together, like getting other Gen Zers together. And it's, and you see it all the time, like online or like Twitter, like when there was the big group of people that went to Area 51 on the same day, like, but that's like, that's a real thing though. Like Gen Z is able to create community, and I think they'll be a really valuable asset too for businesses as far as taking a new angle, creating community and more real, why-driven brands and businesses.
Well, yeah, you make a great point. Because Gen Z has grown up in a very hyper-connected society, Gen Zers, by nature, started creating communities online, right? Like, when I was a kid, it was the kids in my neighborhood or where you could ride a bike, and when the streetlights came on, you came home. And we always talk about, back in my day. And, there's something to that, right? But there's something to this, like, community approach of being able to build global. I'm writing a book right now called The Social Soul, Mastering Your Personal and Professional Brand through value, through intentionality and authenticity, right? It's all about value-added networks. And the idea is that it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can create community through intentionality and authenticity and the way you interact and engage in your communities. And more today, especially after the pandemic, it shows us why we need to build that online, which Gen Zs are digital natives. and they've been building online communities from the very beginning. So it's interesting you bring that point up and how that's going to affect workplace. And I agree. This whole hustle culture is a bit overdone. I think you still need to hustle and you still need to grind. But when you hustle with intentionality, you allow yourself the ability and space to not need to hustle all the time, right? Am I working hard just to work hard? Because that will burn you out. Versus am I working hard with intentionality? Can I do in 4 hours what you get done in 8? Yeah. Okay. What are the other 4 hours going to? Okay. Maybe 2 hours to recharge and have fun. Maybe 2 hours towards self-development. That's still value add into that intentionality of growth and opportunity. And so I think the working to be working for working's sake is overdone. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens to the work week. Are we going to go to a 4-day work week? Putting in your 40 hours. Like what does output turn into from a salary? Because we judge salary on a 40-hour a week output, but are we going to be more output driven versus time focused? It'll be interesting to see all things that Gen Z will have a huge impact on as we look towards the future. So with that, you have a podcast called Today is the Future. Tell me a little bit about your podcast and who you're interviewing, why, and what's the mission of your podcast when you started it during the pandemic.
Yeah. So Bear Nation, the people on the stuff that I have learned from the people on my podcast, these kids are crazy. They're amazing. And so my podcast, Today is the Future, I'm interviewing teens and 20-somethings from all over the world. I think we have listeners in 90 countries now, which is super cool. And I know Rob's going to get there in no time. He's only been doing this for a month now, as far as posting every week. Yeah. So I interview teens and 20-somethings that are doing inspiring things or projects, and that could be entrepreneurs, activists, writers, musicians, anything, actors, models, whatever it is. And it's been really cool because I think and I started this podcast not about entrepreneurship, but more so about showing young people what's possible, and also opening up a conversation of young people learning from young people. I think you can learn, if you're willing to, you can learn so much from the person across from you that's in the same area of life, because we all come from such different experiences. And so it's been really cool to kind of open the floor of that conversation of young people teaching young people and young people sharing their knowledge, because I feel like we're still in a little bit of that shift of that. You see in a lot of tech companies, it's 20, 30-year-olds kind of running the show. But I feel like in some other industries, some young people are still a little bit discounted. And I think it's been cool to kind of open the floor and really show what these young people are made of. And I've learned amazing things from these people, as well as creating a community around myself. A lot of these guests that I've had have become some of my close friends, and meeting like-minded people. And I think and podcasting is just a really powerful tool to not only have more honest conversations and kind of break through that wall of kind of curated social media, but also creating a community for yourself, which has been super fun. The lessons that I've learned from these young people is just innumerable. They're amazing. Yeah.
Well, I love it. And for those out there listening, if you want another good podcast recommendation, definitely go check out Today's the Future. I know that Livi and I recorded a great episode that'll be coming up here in a little while about what I tell your your younger self as it relates to entrepreneurship. So take a listen and check that out. Livi, as we close out this episode, I always like to ask a few kind of questions to end with. So would love to hear from your perspective, what advice, as we think about Gen Z, we think about even millennials, or just anyone that's entrepreneurial minded right now, what advice would you give them?
Heal. I think a lot of young people could have a lot of benefit healing. And that's why I'm writing my book, because, you know, so many decisions are made in your 20s. And I think oftentimes that growth mindset or I think there's a lot of issues in like the personal development industry, but a lot of those type of growth mindset podcasts or books or whatever it is, content is directed to 40, 50-year-olds. And I think if young people could take the time to get into those things early and heal their trauma, become self-aware, understand how to communicate and create emotional intelligence, is going to make these years of their lives so much better, so much less stressful. And I think they could make more informed and in aligned decisions now and not have to regret those decisions in their 40s and then go into all this trauma that I didn't heal affected me. And I made all these decisions in my 20s, and now I'm paying the price in my 40s. So I would say heal. Heal. Be intentional and heal.
I love that. I mean, the thing is that you don't have to have everything figured out in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s or your 50s. But if you know how to heal and you have a high emotional intelligence, right, and understanding what you're doing and why with intention, and giving yourself space and grace to heal and learn from mistakes, learn from trauma and overcome it, you're going to have more opportunities in front of you to make better decisions the next time, because you've already faced that fear, so to speak,
right?
Or that trauma. So what is one book, resource, show, piece of content that you would recommend right now?
I would say, I mean, obviously my podcast, my book coming out, but I would say, let's see here. I mean, Brene Brown is very well known, and there's a reason that she is, but I really love her books, her podcast, Unlocking Us, her book, The Gifts of Imperfection. I think they're really great books that are actually really deeply researched and original as well, like straight from her. So I really, really love her. And also The Good Life Project. I love Jonathan Fields. He's an incredible podcast host. And that podcast was a big reason why I started my own. Like that, I love The Good Life Project.
Awesome. A couple of great recommendations there. What do you think is your superpower?
Ideas. I'm a big ideas person, and I would say my whole existence is based around making ideas manifest in whatever form that may be.
Love that. I think that's a really important one too, because there's ideation and then there's also making it happen.
Execution, right? Yeah.
And you know, there's a quote that I've talked about a couple of different times that stuck with me. Dream until you make it a reality. Not dream until it becomes a reality. Dream until you make it a reality. Meaning you have to put in the work for your dreams to become reality. It can happen. You can be a dreamer, and then when you're a dreamer and you take those ideas and you start working towards them, they manifest themselves. But if you don't put in the work, it's not going to manifest. You know, too many times I've seen people, I'm manifesting this. And I'm like, what do you mean? You've had 3 opportunities that came to your door, but because it wasn't written down on a piece of paper, wrapped in a bow, you still think that you're manifesting. Like you can only have so many opportunities for things to happen, right? And you have to work and be ready for it. You work at it, be ready for it, and then that comes. So I love that. What is your lasting message to the listeners?
Lasting message. I would say if you want to live a fulfilling life, be very intentional about living in alignment. Pay attention to how you feel and don't always focus on what everyone is telling you should be doing, society, your family, your partner, your parents. and listening to yourself, being self-aware of what living in alignment is for you, what living like Livy is for you, or insert name. And I think that is so important. And I think so many people completely stop caring about living in alignment. And I think that's when your life gets really rough and a lot harder to stay positive and give energy and receive energy and love. And so I would say, do your best to live in alignment, no matter what that looks like for you. And if people don't like the way you live in alignment, do it anyways. I mean, don't be an asshole. Like, don't be mean to people. But like, if people don't like the way you live in alignment, I would pursue that anyways, because I think eventually they will notice your happiness and the energy that you bring into life, and they'll want to live in alignment too, because that freedom is contagious.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to live your own and chart your own path. Each journey is impressive in its own right. Each journey is its own being. And so you can take advice, you can ask others what they think, but living in alignment is doing what you believe, right? It's taking that information in, synthesizing it, and making those decisions based on you. So I love that. A lot of really cool takeaways from this episode, from the way that you made decisions from overcoming a full ride scholarship to starting a business, to starting a podcast, to writing a book, to the conversations that you have online with an amazing community, and the insights you shared on what we can expect out of Gen Z as it already has entered the workforce and will continue to enter the workforce in a post-pandemic world. And a future of work revolution is here, and it'll be interesting to see, what that mission, impact, and purpose is. So I appreciate you, Livy, for sharing some thoughts, insights, in your story with us. How can my listeners find you? Where should they be connecting with you to learn more? Obviously, put the podcast link in the show notes so that they can go check it out. But how should my listeners find you if they want to connect?
I'd say the best place to find me, I just started my YouTube channel, so you can go subscribe on there. It's Livi Redden. I post insights about my life and also how you can live in alignment. And then also my Instagram is Livi Redden. Those are probably the two best places to find me. And then you can also obviously follow me on TikTok, Livi Redden. I'm pretty much on like all social media platforms as Livi Redden, Redden. So yeah.
Awesome. So YouTube, IG, TikTok. We'll also link her website if anyone's out there looking for an amazing content virtual assistant to help drive your coaching or professional services business. We'll make sure to have that all in the show notes. And Livy, thank you once again for coming on, being the first Gen Z guest and sharing your thoughts and insights. And we appreciate just being here, and excited to do some more cool shit together. We'll be following along the book, the podcast, etc. So appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Bear Nation, thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay well. Bear Nation, once again, thank you for listening to the Bare Necessities of Entrepreneurship. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. And until next time, take care.